The Western Conference Finals started off yesterday with an ass kicking as the Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Minnesota Timberwolves 114-88. Was Anthony Edwards as disappointing as what the stat sheet says? We're going to talk about all that plus preview tonight's game with the Knicks and the Pacers right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm one of the hosts here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, the Western Conference Finals got kicked off with a bang yesterday, 114-88, the Oklahoma City Thunder over the Minnesota Timberwolves. And unfortunately, Anthony Edwards disappeared in the fourth quarter of this game, unfortunately. He was held to 18 points. He went 5 of 13 shooting in this game. And Anthony Edwards, after the game, saying, I definitely got to shoot more. I took 13 effing shots, but I'll say probably just get off the ball a little bit more. Play without the ball. I think that would be the answer because playing on the ball, they're going to double and sit in the gaps all day. So I've got to watch some film and take it apart and figure it out. Now, I love hearing that quote from Anthony Edwards of him going to the tape, figuring it out, pulling some things, tearing some things apart and figuring it out, right? Because Julius Randle held up his side of the bargain. 9 of 13 with 28 points, 8 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 assist in this game. He did have 5 turnovers, and the turnovers are definitely a story in this game for the Minnesota Timberwolves. 17 turnovers in this game. Even though Oklahoma City Thunder had 12 themselves, it just was, that's not how you're going to win. The Minnesota Timberwolves in this game shot 34%, basically 35% from the field, 29% from three. That's just not going to cut it at all, right? And when you have a Thunder team that shot above 50% from the field and 52% from three-point range, that's going to be a tough case for anybody, right? And so that's what this team is really going to have to look at. Cason Wallace gave some really good minutes in yesterday's game, even though we only went 1 of 3 from the field. Wiggins, Caruso, they did what you typically expect from a Thunder bench. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had his game, 31 points, 9 assists, 3 steals in this game with 5 rebounds. This is a game in which the Thunder came out and put their imprint on this game early, and the Minnesota Timberwolves were never able to counteract it, unfortunately, when it came down to that. And so they're going to have to get this together. And even though the Minnesota Timberwolves got out to an early lead in this, they actually had the lead at halftime, that 18-point third quarter, and giving up 32 points. It just, the Minnesota Timberwolves didn't have the answer. And so this is going to be an important game, too, because if the Minnesota Timberwolves can steal at least one game at home against the Thunder before going back to Minnesota, it's going to put them in the best situation possible. But I tell you what, this was a Thunder team where their defense, the defense is good. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't think you can say anything else about it. The aggressiveness of the defense in this one it's ridiculous, right? But you get the people that are calling out the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder are this physical team. But then, of course, you got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander getting to the free throw line 14 times. People call him a grifter as far as free throw line, and I think you're gonna get that moniker anytime somebody gets the number of shots that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets from that free throw line. But I think overall, like I've said it before, I've even talked about it many times before, is that the Oklahoma City Thunder are one of the less. They don't get a lot of free throws. Shai gets a lot of free throws. The OKC Thunder don't get a lot of free throws. And so that is something that you got a game plan for, man. But once again, the physicality of the OKC Thunder is consistent. The Minnesota Timberwolves don't really have an answer for it, and they unfortunately lose this game. But Anthony Edwards has to be better. I mean, not to put it all on Ant, like it wasn't all on Ant. Like the defense gave the entire Minnesota Timberwolves team fits. I mean, when it came down to it, that starting 5 all shot the ball like shit. So you need better play overall, but Anthony Edwards is the guy, right? And we talked about how I've talked a lot about over the course of this playoff run, how important Anthony Edwards and the way he stepped up as a leader has been to this Minnesota Timberwolves team. You didn't have that yesterday. You're going to need that. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board. They're going to have to figure it out, and we'll see what they can get. But with that said, we got the Eastern Conference Finals going on today, and this is the Pacers versus the Knicks. I think there's 3 things in this series that the Indiana Pacers that they can definitely give the Knicks fits with. The first one is the depth. The depth alone of the Indiana Pacers is going to be such a tall test for this New York Knicks team to deal with, right? They, we've seen it happen with the Nuggets, for example. The Nuggets didn't have enough rotational players, and they ended up falling by the wayside of the OKC Thunder. Yeah, they pushed it to 7 games, but every game that went on, it's going to be difficult, right? the Pacers, they're going to have to play their starting five a heavy amount of minutes. That just is what is going to happen too, right? But they have a nice bench rotation of players that also can help with that, right? So, when you look at it, you look at the New York Knicks, they have the Iron Man and Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, who played tons of minutes for that team, right? You look at Jalen Brunson with the ankle issues that he's had, OG Anunoby as well, but you're looking at those guys. They're going to have to use their depth to their advantage against this New York Knicks team if they're going to want to be able to get in it. And that's just period, point blank. They're going to have to do that. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? And while the New York Knicks have been playing much better defense than I gave them credit for coming into this playoffs, you got spots that you can attack. Anthony Edwards, I'm sorry, not Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns are two spots in the weak spot of that defense that you can attack. We know what or how great they are on offense, and that's a big part of why the New York Knicks can win this series, but you got to attack them. And Jalen Brunson gives effort on the defensive side of the ball, make no mistake about it. He's a tough son of a bitch, but he is weak. The size, those type of things, they're there. It's a small guard. Small guards can only do so much on switches. They're going to have to target the New York Knicks on those switches if they're going to be able to get into this. So I think that's a big thing that you have to look at for as well in this game. Now, and that's not to say that the Pacers don't have their own defensive question marks in this game. They do. Nembhard, he's another guy that's small, and he's probably not going to be able to guard Jalen Brunson if he gets switched out on that as well. Then you also look at Tyrese Halliburton. He's not always the best defensively or even as engaged when it comes down to that. That's where the New York Knicks can also attack at, right? And then you have as well, one of the biggest benefits for the Pacers is the fact that they just are relentless. They've been relentless throughout this whole playoff run. They've been relentless at every step of the way. They do not back down. They are a physical team that plays physical at the right moments and just don't stop. That's going to be something that works in their benefit as well. They're going to have to watch out for that. Mikal Bridges has already talked about the randomness that's going to come in this series, and it's going to be a lot of that, right? You're going to need Mikal Bridges and his offense and defense on both sides of it and how he can make this New York Knicks team such a tough team to beat when it comes down to it. You're going to need everybody to step up at the right time in this series. This is going to, like I said, this was the one that I had pegged to go 7 games. If either of these conference finals, that's the one to look at it for. But I tell you what, man, it's going to be a very, very difficult game. I think for both teams, they're all going to have their things that they need to match. This is going to be the chess match series, right? How does Tom Thibodeau react and counteract to what Rick Carlisle did? We saw Rick Carlisle outcoach Mazzulla. He outcoached Mazzulla all throughout that series. And this is going to be something, again, where you're going to have to look tough at that, and they're going to have to figure out how to avoid that themselves, man. It's going to be tough. And this is the series that I think is going to be a lot of back and forth. This is one of the series that it's most important to really set the tone early in game one if you want to be able to win this series. And we'll see what's going to happen here, man. Overall, though, I think the Pacers have the advantage with the pace, the toughness, and the depth, and the being able to attack the weak spots of the New York Knicks defense. But it's not by a large margin to where I'm definitely calling them the favorites or anything like that. They're going to have to be prepared. They're going to have to be locked in. Otherwise, this can turn very ugly very quick for either team if they're not engaged, if they're not playing as a team, if they're not executing well. This is the execution series. You have to execute well from start to finish in all these games. Who can play a complete 4 quarters, right? Who falls apart down the stretch of it? That's going to be important for these series. And we'll see what these teams can bring, man. Overall, excited about this. We'll see what happens here. You guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. With that said, there is already lots of trade rumors started up. We already know that a lot of things going around between what players are going to be available, what players are not going to be available. And I've said this before on this show. I really do feel like this is going to be an offseason where we see a lot of money change hands. We see a lot of player movement. We see a lot of things like that. Could even be a star when it comes down to that's moved or not. But I'll say this. If your team, whether you're trading the star or acquiring the star, this is a year where I think there's going to be movement in the East because I think the East is going to be looked at as a little bit weaker with Jason Tatum's injury and things like that. I think that a lot of people are doubting the Cavs that shouldn't. I think the Cavs are still going to be a really good team next year as well. And people, I've called them frauds, things like that. I don't know if that ends up holding true, but you're going to see tons of movement. I think when you already hear as much chatter as you're hearing already between Austin Reeves, could he be what they look to move because of the fit with Luka Doncic? Giannis, of course, is a big chip out there that teams are going to be pivoting to. Philly with the number 3 pick. We heard today that Philly actually is not necessarily pursuing Kevin Durant. If you believe that, they could be playing coy with that as teams posture and things like that. But I think one thing is going to hold true. You're seeing a lot of potential movement when it comes down to it. And yeah, we'll see what happens with it. I think the 76ers, the draft really is going to start at number 3. And I think that's going to be because of partly, not only because of who the Sixers could take, but also that movement that could come there at number 3. If they end up moving off the number 3 overall pick, what does that do? Who acquires it? What does that mean for Philly? Because I think if they're coming off that, that means that they feel like they're getting a star. Even if that's not Kevin Durant, we'll see what happens there. Paul George recently came out and said this: I had an injury. I didn't even know about it. That's when I found out I had a torn abductor. That whole time, I just couldn't move. Does Paul George's injury now add maybe teams to be less or more in on potentially acquiring Paul George because he did have an injury that he didn't know about, and maybe there's some hope that he's going to be able to play better than that heading into next season? Those are the questions that are there, man. This is going to be, I really do think, I don't want to jump forward or jump ahead. We still got to get through the draft and all those type of things like that. This is going to be a fun draft, but between the Warriors, the Bucks, the 76ers, the Celtics, as they decide to do something, the Houston Rockets, there are going to be a lot of potential moves that are around here that teams are going to be looking to try to change their course, change their direction, and we shall see. The Spurs are going to be a big part of this as well. Don't overlook the Spurs. With them at the number 2 overall pick, if they decide to move off of it to try to get a star and jumpstart their process, even though I don't think they should do that, I don't think the Spurs should be in a situation right now where they're looking to jumpstart that a little too much. I think stay the course. You add another really good young talent to the team, and we'll see what happens there overall, man. But I think this offseason is gonna be one for the ages. I think we're gonna see a lot of unexpected movement, some expected movement, and I think we're gonna come out of that with a really another exciting season of parity. And I think that's what the NBA wants, and that's what the NBA is really kind of trying to buy into as well, and see if we can get that done. MVP is gonna be announced tonight as well. Thank you, NBA, for finally getting your shit together and announcing the MVP, which we should have gotten before. It really does feel like they just announce Haize the MVP and get it over with. Let the discourse start and all the fighting and stuff and all the crazy from Jokic fans get started on there. All the defiance from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander fans. Let that go ahead and go. But I think, on top of the MVP and the amazing season that we have from there, I talked a little bit about the parity in the NBA, right? I think when you look at, right, as much as people were talking about the NBA ratings and things like that, TV ratings were up 3% this year over 2024 from the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. And I think that shows that, people say there's not, or people question if there's really parity around the NBA. There is. There's more parity than what we've known before. And so I think those things play a huge role into that as well. And we'll see. But let me know what you guys think on everything down below. Make sure you guys are following us at NBA Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the number 1 spot for everything basketball related. We'll see y'all in the next one. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.